For 300 years, the fundamental unit of economic production has been the human individual. Whether on the factory line or behind a glowing screen, value has been inextricably tethered to time. 1 hour of human attention equals 1 unit of output. We have built our entire civilization on this linear equation. But we are now witnessing the dissolution of that bond. We are moving from the era of the tool, an instrument that waits for a hand to guide it, to the era of the agent, software that perceives, decides, and acts. When these agents are linked, they do not merely automate tasks, they form swarms. Complex adaptive systems capable of executing business logic without human intervention. The internet is currently awash with promises of passive income derived from these systems. But to view multi-agent swarms merely as a wealth generation tactic is to miss the profound structural shift occurring in the global economy. This is not just about automation. It is about the emergence of a synthetic workforce that never sleeps, never forgets, and, crucially, never tires. When the marginal cost of cognitive labor drops to near zero, what happens to the value of human effort? The death of the firm. To understand the multi-agent swarm, we must first look at why companies exist at all. In 1937, the economist Ronald Coase published The Nature of the Firm. He asked a simple question. If markets are so efficient, why do we have companies? Why doesn't an entrepreneur just contract every single task to a different freelancer every morning? Coase's answer was transaction costs. Finding people, negotiating prices, and enforcing contracts is expensive and time-consuming. So, we form companies, hierarchies of humans, to lower these costs. For decades, software lowered transaction costs, but it did not eliminate the need for the hierarchy. You still needed a manager to tell the software what to do. However, the current evolution of large language models, LLMs, allows for the creation of autonomous agents. Unlike a standard script that follows a rigid if-then loop, an agent uses probabilistic reasoning to pursue a goal. When you combine multiple agents, one acting as a researcher, one as a writer, one as a coder, and one as a critic, you create a multi-agent system, MS. Research in this field suggests that these specialized agents, when communicating with one another, outperform single, generalist models in complex problem-solving. They can debate, correct each other's hallucinations, and execute long-horizon tasks. This suggests that the firm of the future is not a building filled with people. It is a folder of code containing a swarm of specialized agents interacting with high-speed friction that no human organization could match. The human system, the desire for decoupling. Why is the search term passive income one of the most persistent queries in the digital age? Psychologically, it represents a desire to decouple survival from labor. Historically, this was the privilege of the aristocracy, landowners who extracted value from assets rather than effort. The digital age promised to democratize this, but instead it created the hustle culture, where the individual is always on. The allure of the multi-agent swarm is the promise of scalable agency. Humans are biologically limited by cognitive load. We can only maintain roughly 150 stable social relationships, a limit known as Dunbar's number. Similarly, a manager can only effectively supervise a handful of direct reports before efficiency collapses. A swarm has no Dunbar number. In theory, a single human architect could deploy a swarm of 10,000 agents, each micro-targeting a specific market niche, generating content, writing code, or arbitrage trading. The human moves from being a laborer to being the architect of a system. But this shift brings a distinct psychological pressure. We are programmed to find meaning in effort. If the economic loop closes without our direct involvement, If the agents research the product, build the product, market the product, and sell the product, the human role is reduced to mere initiator. We face a paradox. We seek total autonomy from work, yet we fear the irrelevance that comes with it. Stochastic chaos. If building a money-printing robot swarm is possible, why hasn't it stabilized the economy yet? The barrier is reliability. Traditional software is deterministic. If you input 2 + 2, the code will always output 4. AI agents, however, are stochastic. They operate on probabilities. Occasionally, they hallucinate, loop, or drift from the objective. In a multi-agent system, these errors can compound. This is known in systems theory as a cascade failure. If the researcher agent hallucinates a fact, the writer agent creates a false narrative based on it, and the publisher agent pushes it to the world. Furthermore, there is the issue of alignment. In game theory, cooperative agents must have incentives that are perfectly aligned. But as researchers have noted, creating robust cooperation in multi-agent reinforcement learning is notoriously difficult. Agents might find shortcuts to their goals that destroy value rather than create it, like a spam bot swarm that generates clicks by destroying the user experience of a platform. The pressure on the human architect is not labor, but orchestration. The passive income requires active high-level vigilance to ensure the swarm does not devolve into digital noise. Where does this trajectory lead? Based on current technological vectors and economic theory, we can project 3 probable scenarios for the integration of multi-agent swarms into the economy. Scenario 1, the hypermanager, probability high. In this near-future scenario, passive remains a myth. The economy shifts toward a model where one human effectively does the work of 50. Tools like AutoGPT or Baby AGI evolve into enterprise-grade dashboards. The human defines the intent, and the swarm executes the implementation. However, this increases the competitive floor. If everyone has a swarm, the standard for output rises exponentially. The human is not liberated from work. They are locked into a high-stakes game of prompt engineering and system debugging. The divide between those who can architect complex systems and those who can only consume them widens drastically. Scenario 2, the protocol economy, probability moderate. Here, the swarms begin to bypass human currency interfaces entirely. Agents begin to trade with other agents using crypto rails or micropayments to access data or compute power. We might see the rise of the autonomous service organization. An agent swarm identifies a market need, e.g., summarizing legal documents, spins up a service, collects fees, pays for its own server costs, and retains profit, all without human intervention. The role of the human shifts to that of a shareholder. You do not manage the swarm, you own the cryptographic keys to its treasury. This creates a disconnect between the real economy of goods and services and the synthetic economy of agent-to-agent transactions. Scenario 3, the value collapse. Probability low but critical. This is the stress test scenario. If the marginal cost of creating content, code, and digital services hits 0 via swarms, the market price for those goods also trends toward 0. This is the content shock theory carried to its logical extreme. If a swarm can generate 1,000 distinct novels a day, the value of a novel collapses. If a swarm can code any app in seconds, software becomes a free commodity. In this future, a passive income evaporates because scarcity, the driver of price, disappears. The only remaining value lies in physical goods, face-to-face human services, and verified biological creation, which becomes a luxury good. How do we adapt to a world where software has agency? We are already seeing the early signs of adaptation in the solopreneur movement. We are seeing individuals generating revenue comparable to small firms by leveraging early-stage automation. But the deeper adaptation must be cognitive. We must shift our identity from execution to curation. The skill of the future is not writing the code. It is evaluating whether the code the swarm wrote is good. It is not writing the essay. It is possessing the taste to know which essay matters. Taste becomes the only unautomatable asset. If the swarm provides infinite variations, the human provides the selection function. We become the editors of reality, filtering the output of our digital extensions. The dream of the multi-agent swarm, the machine that earns while you sleep, is not a new dream. It is the ancient desire for a perpetual motion machine, translated into economics. While the technology to build these swarms is rapidly maturing, the reality is that they do not remove the human from the equation. They merely change our leverage point. Building a swarm is not about exiting the economy. It is about building a mirror. These agents reflect our logic, our biases, and our instructions back at us at scale. If our thinking is flawed, the swarm will amplify that flaw 1,000 times over. If our intent is clear, they can extend our will farther than any biological hand could reach. The question is not whether you can build a system to generate income. The question is, once you have outsourced your labor to the machine, what will you do with the humanity that remains? This channel explores the intersection of human systems and synthetic intelligence. If you value analysis over hype, you are in the right place. Subscribe to Anthrosys